They say your life can change in an instant. One phone call, one decision, one moment that splits your world into before and after. But what they don't tell you is that sometimes it takes losing absolutely everything to discover who you really are. This is the story of Gracie Miller, a 60-year-old black grandmother who went from serving school lunches to owning a billion-dollar empire. But between those two lives, there was betrayal so cruel it would break most people, homelessness so desperate she slept in parking lots, and a secret so powerful it would rewrite her entire existence. They tried to throw her away like garbage. They called her useless, worthless, done. They were wrong, because what they didn't know was that Gracie Miller had the blood of kings running through her veins. And sometimes, the only way to find your crown is to lose everything else first. This is a story about family, about faith, about a black church that became a lifeline when blood relatives became strangers, about a 10-year-old girl with $23 and a heart full of hope, and about the moment when justice finally came for those who thought they could destroy a woman and walk away clean. Settle in, beloved, because this journey is going to take you from the deepest valleys to the highest mountaintops, and by the end, you're going to understand something profound. God doesn't just rebuild broken people, He makes them unbreakable. Let me take you back 6 months before everything changed. Back when Gracie Miller was just an ordinary woman living an ordinary life. Every morning at 5:30 a.m., Gracie's alarm would go off in her small 2-bedroom apartment on the south side. She'd make herself coffee, no sugar, just a splash of cream, and she'd stand at her kitchen window, watching the sunrise paint the sky pink and gold. For 40 years, Gracie had worked in school cafeterias. Lincoln Elementary, Washington Middle School, finally, Jefferson High School, where she'd spent the last 15 years serving lunch to teenagers who rarely said thank you, but always came back for seconds of her mac and cheese. The pay wasn't much. After taxes, she cleared about $2,100 a month. Her rent was $850. Utilities, groceries, her old Honda's insurance, it all added up. But Gracie never complained. She had a roof over her head, food on her table, and most importantly, she had her daughter, Eleanor. Oh, Eleanor, named after Eleanor Roosevelt because Gracie's mama had told her, you name a child after greatness, and greatness will find them. Eleanor had been Gracie's whole world. A surprise baby born when Gracie was just 24, after a brief relationship that didn't last. Gracie raised that girl alone, working double shifts when she had to, going without, so Eleanor could have music lessons, nice school clothes, a chance at something better. And Eleanor bloomed. Honor roll every semester, full scholarship to community college. She became a medical billing specialist, good job, steady income, benefits. She met Darius at a church picnic when she was 28. He seemed nice enough back then. Worked at a warehouse, dressed decent, said the right things. They got married within a year. Riley came along 2 years later. Gracie remembered holding that baby girl for the first time, seeing her daughter's eyes in that tiny face, and thinking, this is what it's all about. This right here. You're going to do amazing things, little one. Your grandma's going to make sure of it. But somewhere along the way, Darius changed. Or maybe he'd always been that way, and the mask just slipped. He started gambling. Small bets at first football games, poker nights with friends. Eleanor would call Gracie, voice tight with worry. Mama, he took $300 from our savings. Said it was a sure thing. But we lost it all. Baby, you need to talk to him. Set boundaries. A man who won't respect money won't respect much else. But Eleanor loved him, or she was trying to. And when you're in the middle of something, it's hard to see the truth that's clear to everyone else. Then, 3 years ago, Eleanor found the lump. Small at first, she thought it was nothing. But nothing turned into something. And something turned into stage 3 breast cancer. The day Eleanor called with the diagnosis, Gracie was at work, serving chicken nuggets to 7th graders. She heard her daughter's voice crack over the phone, and her whole world tilted sideways. Mama, the doctor said it's cancer. They want to start chemo next week. Gracie didn't hesitate. She took every penny she'd saved, $12,000 in a retirement account she'd been building for 20 years, and cashed it out. Penalties, taxes, didn't matter. Her baby needed help. She paid for medications insurance wouldn't cover. She drove Eleanor to every appointment, held her hand through every treatment. Cleaned up when the chemo made her sick, bought special foods. When nothing else would stay down. Darius? He was too busy to take time off work. He was stressed. He was dealing with it in his own way. Translation: he was gambling more, drinking more, and checking out of his marriage. While his wife fought for her life. For 2.5 years, Eleanor fought. And Gracie fought beside her, draining her savings. Maxing out credit cards, picking up extra shifts until her feet ached so bad she could barely walk. But cancer doesn't care how hard you fight. On a Tuesday in January, cold, gray, the kind of day that feels like the world itself is in mourning, Eleanor took her last breath in a hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and broken dreams. Gracie was holding her hand. Riley was curled up next to her mama, crying softly. Darius was in the hallway, on his phone, dealing with an important call. Eleanor's last words were to her daughter. Riley, baby, Grandma's the strongest person I know. She'll take care of you. Promise me you'll be good for Grandma. I promise, Mama, I promise. And then she was gone. Just like that. 36 years old. A whole life, reduced to a death certificate and a funeral bill Gracie couldn't afford. But here's what Gracie didn't know as she sat in that hospital room, holding her dead daughter's hand. The worst was yet to come. 3 days after Eleanor's death, they held the funeral at Morrison's funeral home on 5th Street. It was the cheapest place Gracie could find that didn't look too cheap. $3,200 for the basic package. Gracie put it on a credit card that was already near its limit. The service was simple. White carnations because they were affordable. A closed casket because Eleanor had wasted away at the end. And Gracie wanted people to remember her daughter, as she'd been vibrant and beautiful and full of life. About 50 people came. Eleanor's co-workers from the medical billing office. Some neighbors. A few folks from the church they used to attend before Eleanor got too sick to go. Sister Margaret from Emmanuel Baptist, who'd heard about Eleanor's passing through the community grapevine and came to pay respects to a family she didn't even know yet. Gracie sat in the front row, wearing her only black dress bought at Walmart 15 years ago. And still serviceable if you didn't look too close at the hem. Riley sat beside her, wearing a black dress Eleanor had bought her for a school concert. Too big, but Riley would grow into it. Except now she'd never wear it for anything but mourning. Darius sat on Riley's other side, checking his phone every few minutes. Gracie noticed but didn't say anything. Not the time, not the place. The pastor, a man who'd never met Eleanor, but had a standard funeral speech that hit all the right notes, talked about God's plan and eternal rest and reuniting in heaven. It all sounded hollow to Gracie. Her baby was dead. There was no plan that made that make sense. When it was over, people filed past the casket, paying final respects. They hugged Gracie, said meaningless things like, she's in a better place. And, at least she's not suffering anymore. Gracie nodded, thanked them, held herself together through sheer force of will. One by one, people left. The funeral director discreetly let her know they needed to close up. The burial would be the next morning at 9 a.m. Finally, it was just Gracie, Riley, and Darius left in the viewing room. Riley, go wait in the car. I need to talk to your grandmother. Riley looked at Gracie uncertainly. Gracie nodded, trying to smile, trying to be strong for this little girl who'd just lost her mama. Okay, Daddy. The child walked out, shoulders hunched, looking so small and lost. The door closed behind her with a soft click. And then Darius turned to Gracie, and the mask came off. His face was cold, hard, like a stranger wearing her son-in-law's skin. We need to talk about living arrangements. What do you mean? You've been staying with us for the past 3 months. Helping with Eleanor and Riley. That was fine when Eleanor was alive. But now? Things are different. Gracie felt something cold settle in her stomach. Darius, I've been helping take care of Riley. Cooking, cleaning, getting her to school. Yeah, and I appreciate that. But I can't afford to keep feeding and housing you. The medical bills wiped us out. I'm behind on the mortgage. I need to downsize, maybe get a roommate who can actually pay rent. Are you saying you want me to leave? I'm saying the situation isn't sustainable. Eleanor's gone. You need to figure out your own living situation." Gracie stared at him, trying to process what she was hearing. Her daughter, his wife, was lying in a casket 15 feet away. And he was evicting her. "Darius, I just spent every penny I had taking care of your wife. Our daughter. I have maybe $300 in my bank account. I gave up my apartment 3 months ago to move in and help when Eleanor got really sick. That was your choice. Nobody asked you to do that." The words hit like a physical blow. She was my daughter. And she was my wife. And now she's dead. And I have to think about Riley and me. Not you. What about Riley? She needs her grandmother. Riley needs stability. Not a broke old woman who can't even take care of herself. And there it was. The cruelty, naked and unashamed. Gracie felt tears burning her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. Not in front of him. Not when he was looking at her like she was something he'd scraped off his shoe. "When do you want me to leave?" "Tonight. After the burial tomorrow, I'm changing the locks. So you'll want to get your stuff before then." He said it so casually. Like he was discussing the weather. Like he hadn't just made a 60-year-old woman homeless on the day of her daughter's funeral. "Can I at least say goodbye to Riley?" "I don't think that's a good idea. Clean breaks are better. For everyone." He walked toward the door, then paused and looked back. "And Gracie? Don't try to contact us. I'm serious about that. Riley doesn't need any more instability in her life." The door closed behind him. The sound echoed in the empty funeral home like a coffin lid slamming shut. Gracie stood there, alone with her daughter's casket. And for the first time since Eleanor's diagnosis 3 years ago, she let herself break. She collapsed into the chair, buried her face in her hands, and sobbed. Deep, body-shaking sobs that came from a place so deep she didn't know it existed. She cried for her daughter. For her granddaughter. For herself. For the life she'd built. That had just been ripped away by a man who was supposed to be family. The funeral director found her there 20 minutes later. And gently helped her to her car. That night, Gracie drove back to the house she'd been sharing with Darius and Riley. She packed her belongings, didn't take long. She'd never had much and loaded them into her old Honda. She sat in the driveway for a long time, looking at Riley's bedroom window, hoping to catch a glimpse of her grandbaby. But the curtains stayed closed. Finally, at 11 p.m., she drove away. And she had nowhere to go. Have you ever been truly homeless? Not crashing at a friend's place. Not staying with family while you figure things out. I mean really homeless. Nowhere to go. No one to call. Just you, your car, and the terrifying question, what do I do now? That was Gracie's reality. She drove around for hours that first night, not knowing where to go. The streets were emptier than she'd ever seen them. Every parking lot felt threatening. Every passing car made her nervous. Finally, around 2 a.m., she pulled into a Walgreens parking lot. There were a few other cars scattered around, night shift workers, she hoped. Not people in the same desperate situation as her. She climbed into the back seat, spread out her thin coat like a blanket, and tried to sleep. But sleep wouldn't come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Eleanor's face. Heard Darius's cold voice, broke. Old woman who can't even take care of herself. The temperature dropped. January in the Midwest doesn't mess around. Even with the coat and the car heater running. In short bursts to conserve gas, Gracie was freezing. She'd set Eleanor's framed photo on the dashboard, the only picture she'd managed to grab before leaving. In the orange glow of the parking lot lights. Her daughter smiled at her, forever 36, forever gone. Baby girl, I don't know what to do. I don't know how this happened. How did I end up here? At 4:30 a.m., a flashlight beam cut through the window, startling her awake from the shallow doze she'd finally fallen into. A police officer. Young guy, couldn't have been more than 28. He shone his flashlight inside, then tapped on the window. Gracie's heart was pounding. Was sleeping in your car illegal? Would she get arrested? Where would they take her? She rolled down the window, cold air rushing in. Ma'am, you can't sleep here. Store policy. I'm sorry, officer. I didn't know. I'll move along. The officer looked at her more closely. Saw the photo on the dashboard. The bags of belongings visible in the back. The exhaustion and grief written all over her face. His voice softened. You got somewhere to go? Gracie started to lie. Pride is a powerful thing, but the truth came out before she could stop it. No, sir. I don't. There's a shelter at Emmanuel Baptist Church, 3 blocks east on Porter Street. They serve breakfast at 6. It's warm, safe. Sister Margaret runs it. Good people. He handed her a card with the address written on it. I'm not going to write you a ticket. But you can't stay here. Go to the church. They'll help you. Thank you. He walked away, and Gracie sat there, staring at the card. A shelter. She'd never thought she'd need a shelter. Shelters were for other people. People who'd made bad choices. People who'd given up. But here she was. She started her car, the engine coughed and sputtered, and for a terrifying moment, she thought it wouldn't start. But it finally caught, and she drove 3 blocks east to Emmanuel Baptist Church. The church was beautiful in that way old black churches are. Red brick, white cross on top, stained glass windows that probably glowed like jewels when the sun hit them right. A hand-painted sign out front, community shelter, all welcome. Breakfast 6 to 8 a.m. Gracie sat in her car in the parking lot, watching the sun come up. Pink and gold and purple, painting the sky like God himself was creating art just for her. Other cars started arriving, people who looked like her, tired, worn down, carrying everything they owned in garbage bags and backpacks. They walked into the church like they belonged there, like the church was home. Gracie took a deep breath, got out of her car, and walked toward those doors. The fellowship hall of Emmanuel Baptist Church was everything a church fellowship hall should be. Long folding tables covered with plastic tablecloths, metal folding chairs, industrial kitchen visible through a serving window, the walls covered with children's artwork and Bible verses written in beautiful calligraphy. But what made it special wasn't the room itself. It was the people. About 30 folks were already there when Gracie walked in. Black, white, Latino, Asian. Poverty doesn't discriminate. Some were families, some were alone. All of them looked tired in that bone-deep way that comes from fighting battles nobody else can see. Gracie stood in the doorway, uncertain. Not sure if she was supposed to sign in somewhere. Not sure if there were rules she was breaking just by being there. That's when Sister Margaret appeared. Well, good morning, sugar. You're new here, aren't you? Sister Margaret was in her mid-50s, with silver threaded through her dark hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore a simple dress and a deaconess pin on her sweater. But what struck Gracie most were her eyes. Kind eyes. Eyes that had seen suffering but chose compassion anyway. Yes, ma'am. The police officer said. Officer Rodriguez sends a lot of folks our way. Good man. Well, come on in, baby. You're not standing in that doorway like you don't belong. Everybody belongs here. She took Gracie gently by the elbow and guided her to a table. You sit yourself right here. Breakfast is simple, but it's hot and it's filling. Coffee's on that table over there, help yourself. We'll get you sorted out after you eat. She disappeared into the kitchen and returned with a plate scrambled eggs, grits with butter, 2 pieces of toast, and a small cup of mixed fruit. A styrofoam cup of coffee, black. It wasn't fancy, but it was served with dignity, with kindness, like Gracie was a guest at someone's home, not a charity case. Gracie picked up her fork, took a bite of eggs, and something inside her just broke. All the grief she'd been holding, all the humiliation of Darius's cruelty, all the fear and uncertainty and exhaustion, it all came flooding out. She put her fork down, covered her face with her hands, and wept. Right there at that table, in front of 30 strangers, she fell apart. And Sister Margaret pulled up a chair, put her arm around Gracie's shoulders, and held her. Let it out, baby. Let it all out. The Lord sees you. We see you. You're home now. Around them, people quietly went about their business. Nobody stared. Nobody made her feel ashamed. Because everyone in that room understood. They'd been there. Some of them were still there. When Gracie finally cried herself out, Sister Margaret handed her a napkin. You want to tell me what happened? And Gracie did. All of it. Eleanor's cancer. The medical bills. Darius throwing her out. Sleeping in her car. She told this stranger everything because she had no one else to tell. Sister Margaret listened without interrupting. When Gracie finished, she nodded slowly. That man's going to answer to God for what he did to you. But until then, you're going to answer to God for what you do next. You hear me? You can let this break you, or you can let it build you. Your choice. I don't know if I have any more building left in me. Baby, you got out of that car this morning and walked through these doors. That took strength. You've got more building in you than you know. Now, let's talk practical. You got a job? I worked in a school cafeteria for 40 years. But I took a leave of absence when my daughter got sick. My supervisor said I could come back, but I'd have to wait for an opening. That could be months. You got in Social Security? Anything? Not until I'm 62. That's 2 years away. Savings? I spent it all on my daughter's medical care. Sister Margaret nodded, making mental notes. Okay, here's what's going to happen. We've got cots in the church basement. Basic, but clean and safe. You can stay there. We serve breakfast and dinner. You'll need to help out with prep and cleanup. That's how we keep this place running. Everyone contributes what they can. I can do that. I've been cooking all my life. Good. We've also got a clothes closet, donated items, all clean. You'll need to dress decent for job interviews. We partner with a workforce development program. That helps folks get back on their feet. And we've got a social worker who comes in twice a week. She can help you navigate the system, food stamps, housing assistance, all that. Gracie felt something she hadn't felt since Eleanor's diagnosis. Hope. Small, fragile, but real. Why are you doing this? You don't even know me. Baby, the church is supposed to be the hands and feet of Jesus. If we can't help a sister in need, what good are we? Besides, the Lord works in mysterious ways. Maybe you're here for a reason. Maybe we're here for a reason. Maybe this is all part of a bigger plan. At the time, Gracie thought Sister Margaret was just being kind. Just saying what church folks say. To make you feel better about your terrible situation. She had no idea how right Sister Margaret would turn out to be. For the next 2 months, Emmanuel Baptist Church became Gracie's world. She slept on a cot in the church basement, not comfortable, but safe and dry. She helped Sister Margaret prepare meals, discovering that feeding 50 people from donated ingredients was its own kind of miracle. She met people whose stories made her own struggles feel small. Brother James, a Vietnam veteran who'd been on the streets for 15 years after his wife died. And his PTSD made it impossible to hold down a job. Sister Evelyn, whose husband cleaned out their bank accounts and left her with nothing but debt. And 3 kids to raise. Young Marcus, only 22, kicked out by his parents when he came out as gay. And couldn't afford rent on a minimum wage job. Each person carried their own pain. But together, they created something beautiful. A community. A family, not of blood, but of shared struggle and mutual support. Brother James taught Gracie which gas stations let you use the bathroom without hassling you. Sister Evelyn showed her where to get free toiletries. And how to make $1 stretch further than seemed possible. Marcus, who was brilliant with computers, helped Gracie set up an email account and fill out online job applications. The Black Church, Gracie discovered, wasn't just a building. It was a living, breathing organism. It was potluck dinners where everyone brought what they could. It was Sunday services that went long because people needed to testify. Needed to release their burdens into the community. It was Sister Margaret slipping extra food into people's bags when she thought nobody was looking. It was the way everyone called each other, brother, and sister, and meant it. But even surrounded by all that love, Gracie's heart ached for the person she couldn't reach. Riley, her grandbaby, stuck in that house with Darius. Was she eating properly? Was she doing her homework? Did she cry herself to sleep at night, missing her mama and wondering why grandma disappeared? Gracie had tried calling. Darius blocked her number. She'd driven past the house. Curtains always drawn. She'd even tried talking to Riley's school. But they wouldn't release information to someone who wasn't listed as an emergency contact. Every night, lying on that cot in the church basement, Gracie prayed. She prayed harder than she'd ever prayed in her life. Not for herself, she'd survive somehow. But for Riley. For that innocent child caught in the middle of adult cruelty. Lord, I don't understand your plan. But I'm asking you, begging you, please watch over my grandbaby. Keep her safe. Let her know she's loved. And if there's any way at all, let me see her again. Amen. God, as it turns out, was listening. And he was about to answer that prayer in the most unexpected way. Chabteo 5 Bimil Bangman Bisagui Huamong. It was a Thursday afternoon in early March. The kind of early spring day that can't make up its mind sunshine. 1 minute, cold rain the next. The basement of Emmanuel Baptist had a small back hallway where donated clothes were sorted and stored. Gracie had volunteered to organize it, creating a system where people could easily find what they needed by size and season. She was folding a stack of children's clothes, a donated bag from a family whose kids had outgrown them, when she heard the side door open. Footsteps, small ones, hesitant. Gracie looked up, expecting one of the regular kids, who sometimes came with their parents. But it wasn't one of the regular kids. It was Riley, standing in the doorway, soaking wet, wearing a too thin jacket that was clearly not warm enough for March rain. Her long braids were plastered to her head. Her shoes were muddy. Her big brown eyes, Eleanor's eyes, were wide and searching. For a moment, Gracie couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't believe what she was seeing. Riley. The little girl's face crumpled, and she ran straight into her grandmother's arms, hitting Gracie with enough force to knock the wind out of her. They collapsed together onto the floor, both of them crying so hard they couldn't speak. Gracie wrapped her arms around this precious child, feeling how thin she'd gotten, how she trembled, how she clung like she'd never let go. Grandma, Grandma, I found you. I found you. Oh, baby. Oh, my sweet baby. How did you get here? Riley pulled back just enough to look at her grandmother's face, tears streaming down her cheeks. I remembered you said you were staying at a church called Emmanuel. I looked it up on the school computer during library time. I walked here after school. It took a long time. I told Daddy I was going to my friend Jessica's house to work on a project. Baby, you walked? In this rain? That's got to be 3 miles. I had to see you, Grandma. I had to. Gracie cupped Riley's face in her hands, looking at this brave, beautiful child who'd walked 3 miles in the rain just to find her grandmother. Does your daddy know where you are? No. He thinks I'm at Jessica's until 5:30. That's what I told him. Gracie glanced at the clock. It was 3:15. They had maybe 2 hours before Riley had to go back. Come on, baby. Let's get you dried off. You're soaked through. She took Riley to the small bathroom, found a towel and some dry clothes from the donation closet. While Riley changed, Gracie heated up some leftover soup from lunch. When Riley emerged in clothes too big but dry, Gracie sat her down at the folding table and put the soup in front of her. I'm not that hungry, Grandma. When's the last time you ate a real meal? Riley looked down at her hands. Daddy doesn't cook much. Sometimes he brings home fast food, but mostly he says to make myself a sandwich or cereal. Rage flashed through Gracie, hot and sudden. But she pushed it down. This wasn't the time. Well, you eat this soup. All of it. And tell Grandma what's been going on. And Riley did. The words tumbled out between spoonfuls of soup. She told Gracie how Darius was always on the phone, always arguing with someone, always stressed. How he forgot to buy groceries sometimes. How the house was always messy now because nobody cleaned it. How she tried to do her homework, but couldn't concentrate because Daddy was always yelling at the TV or at his phone. She told Gracie about the nightmares she had, where her mama was calling for her, but she couldn't find her. About how she cried into her pillow at night so Daddy wouldn't hear. About how she missed Grandma so much it hurt. Why did you leave, Grandma? Why didn't you say goodbye? Gracie's heart broke all over again. Oh, baby, I didn't want to leave. Your daddy, he made me go. He said I couldn't stay anymore. But why? You were helping. You made me breakfast and helped me with my homework and… I know, sweetie, I know. But sometimes grown-ups make decisions that don't make sense. Your daddy was going through a hard time and he wasn't thinking clearly. Even now, even after everything. Gracie tried to protect Riley from the full truth. Because that's what grandmothers do. Can I come live with you, Grandma? Please? The question pierced Gracie like a knife. Baby, I don't have a place right now. I'm staying here at the church, in the basement. It's not a place for children. I don't care. I want to be with you. I know, sweetie. I want that too, more than anything. But right now, that's not possible. Riley's face fell, and Gracie saw her daughter's expression. They're the way Eleanor used to look when she was disappointed but trying to be brave. Then Riley reached into her jacket, pocket the wet one she'd been wearing and pulled out a crumpled plastic baggie. Inside were bills, 1s and 5s, all wrinkled and damp from the rain. I've been saving my lunch money. I have $23. It's not much, but maybe it can help? Maybe you can get an apartment? Gracie stared at that baggie. At $23, that represented weeks of a 10-year-old girl going hungry at lunch. Sacrificing her meals to save money. For her grandmother. And something broke inside Gracie. Not in a bad way. In a way that rearranged her from the inside out. She took Riley's face in both hands and looked into those big brown eyes. Baby, listen to me. Listen real good. Grandma is going to rise again. You hear me? I'm going to get back on my feet. I'm going to get a place to live. And I'm going to come get you. I promise you that. On your mama's grave, on everything holy, I promise. You promise? I promise. And when have you ever known Grandma to break a promise? Never. That's right. Never. So you hold on to that. No matter what happens, no matter how hard things get. You remember Grandma's coming for you. They held each other for another hour. Gracie helped Riley with the homework she'd brought in her backpack. They talked about school, about Riley's friends, about the book Riley was reading. Normal things. Precious things. At 5 o'clock, Sister Margaret appeared with Brother James. I'm going to have Brother James drive Riley home. We'll drop her off a block away so her daddy doesn't see. That work for you? Thank you, Sister Margaret. For everything. Gracie walked Riley to Brother James's old truck. She hugged her granddaughter one more time, breathed in the smell of her hair. Tried to memorize every detail. I love you, Grandma. I love you too, baby. So much. You be strong for me, okay? And remember my promise. I'll remember. Gracie watched the truck drive away, carrying her grandbaby back to a house. Where she wasn't being properly cared for, back to a man who saw her as an inconvenience instead of a blessing. She stood in the church parking lot as the rain started again, soaking her to the skin, and she looked up at the gray sky. Lord, I kept my faith when my daughter died. I kept it when Darius threw me out. I kept it when I ended up on the streets. But I'm telling you right now, I need you to help me keep that promise to Riley. I need you to show me the way. Because I can't do this alone. The rain continued to fall. And Gracie went back inside, her resolve harder than it had ever been. She didn't know it yet, but God was already answering her prayer. In fact, the answer was already on its way. In a black Lincoln Town car. Driven by a lawyer who'd been searching for Gracie Miller for 30 years. 2 weeks after Riley's visit, on a Tuesday morning that started like any other, Gracie was sweeping the front steps of Emmanuel Baptist Church. It was one of her assigned duties, keeping the church entrance clean and welcoming. She liked the work. It gave her time to think, to pray, to plan her next steps. She was just finishing when she heard it. The sound of an expensive car engine. Different from the usual traffic in this neighborhood. A black Lincoln Town car pulled up to the curb. Sleek, professional, completely out of place. The driver's door opened and a woman stepped out. African American, maybe mid-50s, wearing a navy blue business suit that probably cost more than Gracie used to make in a month. She carried a leather briefcase that screamed, expensive lawyer. The woman looked right at Gracie. Mrs. Gracie Miller? Gracie's first instinct was fear. You don't end up homeless. Without developing a healthy suspicion of official-looking people asking questions. Who's asking? My name is Audrey Jefferson. I'm an estate attorney with Berkshire and Associates in Chicago. Mrs. Miller, I've been searching for you for a very long time. Sister Margaret appeared in the church doorway, protective instincts activated. Everything all right out here, Gracie? Sister Margaret? I spoke with you on the phone last week. You said Mrs. Miller was staying here. That's right. And I told you I'd ask her if she wanted to speak with you. I don't just hand out information about our people. I understand. And I respect that. Mrs. Miller, is there somewhere private we can talk? I have information about your biological father that I believe you'll want to hear. Gracie's biological father. The man her mother had rarely mentioned. The man who'd been gone before Gracie was even born. The man who was more mystery than memory. My father's dead. Has been for years, far as I know. Yes, ma'am. He passed away 6 months ago. That's why I'm here. Mrs. Miller, your father's name was Henry Miller. He was the founder and CEO of Miller International Hotels. And he left everything to you. The words hung in the air like they belonged to a different language. Miller International Hotels. Gracie had heard of them, luxury properties, mostly in big cities and tourist destinations. The kind of places regular people like her would never stay at. I think you have the wrong person. I don't. We've been searching for you since your father passed. He'd been looking for you for decades. May we please sit down? This is going to take some time to explain. They moved inside to Pastor Williams's office. The pastor was out making visits, so Sister Margaret offered the space. She stayed, too, as a witness and support. Because that's what Sister Margaret did. Ms. Jefferson opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. Mrs. Miller, do you know anything about your father? Anything your mother might have told you? Not much. Mama said his name was Henry. That he was from Chicago. That he didn't know about me when she got pregnant. That by the time she tried to tell him, he'd moved and she couldn't find him. That's essentially correct. Your mother Sarah Jackson, later Sarah Miller after she married your stepfather, had a brief relationship with Henry Miller in 1963. She was 17. He was 19. When she discovered she was pregnant. Henry had already left for business school in New York. She didn't have his new address or phone number. Ms. Jefferson slid a photograph across the desk. A handsome black man in his 20s. Wearing a suit, standing in front of what looked like a construction site. Your father, in 1965. That's the groundbreaking for his first hotel in Chicago. He started with one property and built it into an empire. Gracie stared at the photo, looking for some resemblance, some connection to this stranger who was supposedly her father. Henry never married, never had other children. He poured everything into his business. But according to his private journals, which were part of his estate papers, he never forgot your mother. In his 50s, he hired private investigators to find her. Did they? They did. But by then, Sarah had passed away. The investigators found record of her death in 1992. But they also found something else, record of your birth. Gracie Ann Jackson, born March 15, 1965. Ms. Jefferson pulled out more documents. Birth certificate, school records, employment history, decades of Gracie's life, documented and tracked. We've been trying to locate you for 30 years, Mrs. Miller. You moved several times, changed your name when you married briefly in your 20s. The trail went cold more than once. But this is your father's last will and testament. I'm going to read you the relevant section. I, Henry James Miller, being of sound mind and body, do hereby leave my entire estate to my biological daughter, Gracie Ann Miller, also known as Gracie Jackson. I never had the privilege of knowing my daughter, but I have never stopped loving her or hoping to find her. It is my deepest regret that I was not part of her life. I hope that this inheritance will provide her with security and opportunity, and will, in some small way, make up for my absence. Gracie couldn't speak, couldn't process what she was hearing. Furthermore, it is my express wish that my daughter be protected from exploitation. Therefore, I include the following provision. Anyone who has mistreated, abandoned, or shown cruelty to my daughter shall be permanently barred from receiving any benefit, directly or indirectly, from her inheritance. This includes, but is not limited to, spousal claims, family claims, or claims made on behalf of others. Sister Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. Oh, Lord. Oh, sweet Lord. Mrs. Miller, your father's estate is valued at approximately $1.2 billion. Miller International Hotels consists of 32 properties across the United States and Caribbean. There are also significant investments, real estate holdings, and liquid assets. All of it is now yours. The room seemed to tilt. Gracie gripped the edge of the desk, her head spinning. That can't be real. I assure you, it's very real. We've already processed the DNA testing, using samples from your daughter's medical records with legal authorization, of course. The match is definitive. You are Henry Miller's biological daughter and his sole heir. Gracie looked at Sister Margaret, looking for some anchor in this surreal moment. Sister Margaret was crying, her hands clasped in prayer. I told you, baby. I told you the Lord was working on something. There are documents you'll need to sign. We'll need to set up accounts. transfer assets, establish legal representation for you. But the bottom line is this: as of today, you are one of the wealthiest black women in America. Gracie's mind went immediately to Riley. To the promise she'd made. To those $23 in a crumpled baggie. My granddaughter, Riley. She's living with her father, my son-in-law. He's not taking good care of her. With your resources, Mrs. Miller, you can petition for custody. You can provide her with every advantage. And given your son-in-law's treatment of you, which would be well documented by the church community here, and given that clause in your father's will, he would have no claim to your assets. None at all. The provision, the protection Henry Miller had written into his will for a daughter he'd never met, almost like he'd known, like he'd seen into the future, and understood that Gracie would need that protection. Gracie thought about Darius, about his cruelty, about how he'd thrown her out on the day of her daughter's funeral, about how that cruelty had led her here, to this church, where she'd been found by a lawyer searching for decades. If Darius had been kind, Gracie might have stayed in that house. Hidden from the investigators, never discovered. His cruelty had inadvertently led her to her inheritance. God, it seemed, had a sense of irony. Mrs. Miller, are you all right? Gracie looked at Ms. Jefferson, at Sister Margaret, at the documents spread across the desk, at the photograph of the father she'd never known, but who'd never stopped looking for her. Where do I sign? The next 72 hours were a whirlwind that Gracie would later struggle to remember clearly. It felt like a dream, or like she'd stepped into someone else's life. Ms. Jefferson took her to a hotel, not just any hotel, but the Miller International property downtown. The presidential suite on the 45th floor, with views of the entire city, spread out like a glittering blanket of lights. Gracie stood at those floor-to-ceiling windows that first night, still wearing her worn clothes from the church, and tried to process the fact that she owned this building. This beautiful, luxurious building where rooms cost more per night than she used to make in a week. A personal shopper arrived the next morning. A kind woman named Denise, who didn't bat an eye at Gracie's situation, who simply measured her and returned with clothes that fit perfectly. Not flashy. Gracie wouldn't have worn flashy, but elegant. Quality. The kind of clothes that made you stand a little taller when you put them on. Gracie had her hair done at a salon where they treated her like royalty. Nothing dramatic, she kept her short, natural style, but shaped and styled in a way that looked polished and confident. She met with financial advisors, lawyers, accountants. Everyone was respectful, patient, explaining things in terms she could understand. The number, $1.2 billion, kept coming up, and each time, Gracie had to remind herself it was real. But through all of it, one thought kept circling in her mind. Riley. On the third day, sitting in Ms. Jefferson's office in downtown Chicago, Gracie brought it up. I want to petition for custody of my granddaughter. As soon as possible. I've already begun the paperwork. Given your financial resources and the documented neglect we have. Statements from Riley's school about her coming to class without proper meals or clean clothes, it's a strong case. Will Darius fight it? He might. But Mrs. Miller, you need to understand something. You have resources now. You can hire the best family law attorneys in the state. You can demonstrate that you can provide Riley with stability, education, healthcare, everything a child needs. And given his treatment of you, which we have multiple witnesses for, the court will not look favorably on him. There was something Ms. Jefferson wasn't saying. Gracie could hear it in her tone. What else? We've done some background checking on Darius Williams. Mrs. Miller, your son-in-law has significant gambling debts. Roughly $43,000 owed to various entities, some of them not exactly legal. He's 3 months behind on his mortgage. His credit cards are maxed out. He's one step away from bankruptcy. Gracie processed this. Eleanor's husband, the man her daughter had loved, was drowning in debt. Even while Eleanor was dying. While Gracie was draining her savings to help with medical bills, Darius was gambling away money they didn't have. I'm telling you this because there's a high probability that when Darius finds out about your inheritance, he's going to try to get access to it. Through Riley, through some claim of family connection. Whatever angle he can find. But that clause in my father's will protects you completely. He has no legal claim to your assets. None. But that doesn't mean he won't try. People do desperate things when they're drowning in debt. Let him try. He threw me away. Now he's going to watch me rise. There was steel in Gracie's voice that hadn't been there before. Not anger, exactly. More like resolve. Like something that had been sleeping inside her had finally woken up. The custody petition was filed on Friday. By Monday, the news had spread through the legal community. And by Tuesday, Darius knew. Chabteo 8 Pasigjawi Gongwang Kaleumaga Chajayoda. The call came from Darius's lawyer. A cheap storefront attorney who'd been helping Darius try to claim Eleanor's tiny life insurance policy. And any assets from Gracie's estate, which he'd assumed meant whatever little she might have had. The lawyer's voice on the phone was careful. Professional. But underneath, Darius could hear the shock. Darius, we need to talk. There's been a development concerning your mother-in-law. What development? Did she die? Good riddance. She's not dead. She's... Darius, have you heard of Miller International Hotels? Yeah, so what? She owns it. All of it. Her biological father was Henry Miller. He left her everything when he died. We're talking over $1 billion. Silence on the line. Then, what? Your mother-in-law is a billionaire. And she's petitioning for full custody of Riley. And Darius, there's a clause in the will. Anyone who mistreated her is barred from any benefits from the inheritance. That includes you. That includes any claims you might make through Riley. Darius's world imploded in that moment. The old woman he'd thrown out like garbage. The woman he'd called useless and broke. She was a billionaire, and he was drowning in debt with loan sharks calling him 3 times a day. Threatening broken bones if he didn't pay up soon. He hung up on his lawyer and immediately called Gracie's old number. Blocked. He tried the church. Sister Margaret answered. Emmanuel Baptist Church, this is Sister Margaret. I need to talk to Gracie Miller. It's urgent. Mrs. Miller isn't staying here anymore. She's moved on to better accommodations. Where? Give me her number. I don't think so. You had your chance to treat that woman right, and you chose cruelty. Now you get to live with the consequences. Have a blessed day. She hung up. Darius stared at his phone in disbelief. His girlfriend, the woman he'd been secretly seeing, even while Eleanor was dying, called. She'd heard the news through mutual acquaintances. Baby, is it true? Your mother-in-law is rich? Apparently. So, that means Riley's going to be rich too, right? Which means you. It doesn't work like that. There's some clause. I can't get any of it. What? How is that possible? Because I kicked her out, okay? After the funeral. And apparently that means I'm not entitled to anything. You kicked out a billionaire? There was a long pause. Darius, you're an idiot. She hung up, and Darius knew, in that moment, that she wasn't coming back. Why would she? He had nothing to offer. No money, no prospects, just debt and a warehouse job that barely covered his bills. Meanwhile, the loan sharks were circling closer. The mortgage company had sent a final notice. His credit cards were demanding payment he couldn't make. He needed that money, needed Gracie's help, and there was only one way to get it. He had to find her and beg. 1 week after the custody petition was filed, Gracie returned to Emmanuel Baptist Church. Not because she was staying there, she'd moved into a luxury apartment and had already made arrangements to buy a house, but because she wanted to give back to the place that had saved her. She arrived in a black Mercedes sedan with a driver. She wore elegant clothes but nothing flashy. She'd made arrangements with Sister Margaret to donate $2 million to expand the shelter, hire more staff, and create a job training program. She was standing on the church steps, talking with Sister Margaret and Pastor Williams, when a beat-up Honda screeched into the parking lot. Darius practically fell out of the car and ran toward them. Gracie, wait, please. Sister Margaret stepped in front of Gracie, protective. Brother James emerged from the church, along with several other members who'd heard the commotion. You're not welcome here. I just need to talk to her. 5 minutes. Gracie put a hand on Sister Margaret's shoulder. It's okay, Sister Margaret. Let him talk. She stood there, calm and dignified, looking at the man who'd destroyed her life just 3 months ago. He looked terrible, unshaven, eyes wild, desperate. Gracie, I need your help. I'm in serious trouble. I owe money to some bad people. If I don't pay them, you'll what? Lose your house? End up on the streets? Sleep in your car? The words were delivered calmly, almost gently, but they hit like hammer blows. I made a mistake, okay? I was grieving. I wasn't thinking clearly, but we're family. Eleanor was my wife. Riley is my daughter. Please, keep going. What? You're begging. Keep going. Get on your knees. The people gathered around gasped. Darius stared at her, not believing what he was hearing. You want my help? You want my money? Then show me you mean it. Get on your knees. For a moment, Darius's pride fought with his desperation. Pride lost. He dropped to his knees on the church steps, right there in front of everyone. Please, Gracie, I'm begging you. I'll do anything. Just help me. Gracie walked down the steps slowly. She stood over him, this man who'd called her worthless. Who'd thrown her out on the day of her daughter's funeral. People were pulling out phones, recording. This moment would be remembered. Talked about. Shared. When my daughter was dying, where were you? I was. Gambling. You were gambling. While Eleanor fought for her life, you were throwing away money we didn't have. I know, when I gave everything I had, every penny. Every ounce of strength to take care of your wife, my daughter, where were you? He couldn't answer, because they both knew the truth. And when she died, when I had nothing left, when I needed family, needed shelter, needed basic human kindness. What did you do? Still he couldn't speak. You called me useless. You called me broke. You called me worthless. You told me to live in the streets where I belonged. And then you threw me out. On the day of my daughter's funeral. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. You're not sorry you did it. You're sorry it cost you $1 billion. The truth of those words hung in the air like smoke. You threw me away like garbage, Darius. And you know what? Maybe that's exactly what I needed. Because hitting rock bottom showed me something important. It showed me who I really was. It showed me what real family looks like. These people fed me when I was hungry. They sheltered me when I was homeless. They treated me with dignity when you treated me like trash. They're more family to me than you ever were. But Riley is not your bargaining chip. Riley is a child who deserves better than a father. Who sees her as a meal ticket. And you know what else? My father, a man I never even met, loved me enough to protect me from people like you. There's a clause in his will. You get nothing, not one penny, not through me, not through Riley, nothing. She leaned down, getting close to his face. You tried to break me. You tried to destroy me. But all you did was lead me to my destiny. So thank you, Darius. Thank you for being exactly the kind of man you are. Because if you'd been kind, if you'd let me stay, I might never have come here. I might never have been found. She straightened up, brushed off her hands like she was brushing away dirt. Now get off this church's property before I call the police. And have you removed for harassment. Darius stayed on his knees. Broken, as Gracie turned and walked back to her waiting car. Sister Margaret and the church community cheered. Some clapped. Some cried. As the Mercedes pulled away. Gracie looked back one time through the tinted window. Saw Darius still kneeling there, watching her leave. Understanding too late that he'd thrown away any chance at redemption. The last thing Gracie felt for him wasn't anger. It was pity. Because she was free, and he was trapped in a prison of his own making. The video of Darius begging on his knees went viral within 24 hours. People who knew him saw it. His co-workers, his boss, his gambling associates, his girlfriend, the one who'd stuck around hoping for money, texted him one last time, "We're done. Don't contact me again." Within a week, everything Darius had left collapsed like a house of cards. His warehouse job fired him not officially because of the video, but because of performance issues that conveniently came up right afterward. The mortgage company foreclosed on the house. His car was repossessed when he couldn't make payments. The loan sharks he owed money to weren't sympathetic. 2 of them paid him a visit. One night in the parking lot of the cheap motel where he was staying. They didn't kill him, that would be counterproductive, but they made it clear that his debt wasn't going away. He'd be paying them back for years, one way or another. Meanwhile, Gracie's lawyers filed a restraining order. Darius was legally barred from coming within 500 feet of Gracie or Riley. Violation would mean immediate arrest. The custody hearing happened 3 weeks after the confrontation at the church. Darius showed up without a lawyer, couldn't afford one anymore. He looked like he'd aged 10 years in a month. Wrinkled clothes, bloodshot eyes. The smell of desperation. Gracie arrived with Ms. Jefferson and a family law attorney who'd argued cases before the Supreme Court. She wore a dignified suit. Riley sat beside her, holding her grandmother's hand, looking healthier and happier than she'd been in months. The judge reviewed the evidence. Riley's testimony about how Daddy forgot to buy groceries. About how she'd been walking 3 miles in the rain to find her grandmother. School records showing Riley coming to class hungry and in unwashed clothes. Sister Margaret's testimony about Darius kicking Gracie out on the day of Eleanor's funeral. Darius's financial records showing gambling losses, even while his wife was dying. The video of him begging for money on church steps. Character witnesses who painted a picture of neglect and cruelty. The judge's decision took less than 10 minutes. It is the ruling of this court that full legal and physical custody of Riley Williams be granted to her grandmother, Gracie Ann Miller. Mr. Williams, you are granted supervised visitation once per month, pending completion of parenting classes and financial counseling. Do you understand? Yes, Your Honor. Furthermore, this court is granting Mrs. Miller's motion for a permanent restraining order. You are not to come within 500 feet of Mrs. Miller without her express permission. Any violation will result in immediate arrest. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and just like that, Riley was safe. Darius left the courtroom alone. No family, no friends, no prospects. He'd lost everything: his wife to cancer, his daughter to his own cruelty, his home and job to his own poor choices. And the woman he'd thrown away was now raising his daughter in a penthouse with every advantage money could buy. Karma, it turned out, had perfect timing. The penthouse Gracie bought was on the 42nd floor of a luxury building downtown. Floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the whole city. 4 bedrooms, each with its own bathroom. A kitchen bigger than her old apartment. Space to breathe, space to heal, space to become a family again. Riley's bedroom was decorated in soft purples and blues, her favorite colors. Bookshelves lined one wall, waiting to be filled. A desk for homework. A window seat where she could curl up and read. Everything a little girl could need. But Gracie's favorite detail was the photo wall in the hallway. Pictures of Eleanor throughout her life. Baby photos, school pictures, her wedding day, holding Riley as a newborn. Gracie wanted Riley to be surrounded by her mother's memory, to know that Eleanor's love was still present even though she was gone. On Eleanor's picture, Gracie had placed a small plaque, Eleanor Miller Williams, beloved daughter and mother. She taught us that love means sacrifice, and sacrifice means showing up, every single day. Riley adjusted better than Gracie had dared hope. The new school was good: small classes, attentive teachers, a counselor who specialized in helping kids process grief. Riley made friends, started smiling more, laughing again. Every night, Gracie tucked Riley into that big, comfortable bed, and they'd talk about the day. About school, about friends, about Mama. Grandma, do you think Mama knows I'm okay now? Baby, I know she does. I know she's watching from heaven, and I know she's proud of you. Proud of how strong you've been. Do you think she's proud of you too? Gracie thought about that. About the journey from that funeral home to this penthouse. About sleeping in her car and now sleeping in a bedroom bigger than her old entire apartment. About being called worthless and now being worth over $1 billion. I hope so, baby. I really hope so. But Gracie didn't just focus on Riley. She remembered the people who'd caught her when she fell. Emmanuel Baptist Church received that $2 million donation, enough to double the size of the shelter, hire a full-time social worker and job counselor, and establish a food pantry that could serve the whole neighborhood. Sister Margaret became the paid director of the community outreach program, making more in a year than she'd made in the past 10 combined. Brother James got a job managing the expanded facilities, plus his own apartment in a building Gracie bought and converted into affordable housing. Gracie established the Eleanor Miller Williams Foundation, dedicated to helping families dealing with cancer expenses. She funded research, paid medical bills for people who couldn't afford them, created support groups for caregivers and patients. She funded scholarships for kids from low-income families to attend good schools. She invested in small Black-owned businesses. She bought and renovated properties in struggling neighborhoods. creating jobs and opportunities. She used her wealth the way it was meant to be. Used to lift people up, to create opportunity, to pay forward the kindness she'd received when she had nothing. But there was one more thing she needed to do. 6 months after gaining custody of Riley, on a beautiful Sunday morning in early fall, Gracie and Riley drove to Oakwood Cemetery. Eleanor's grave was in a modest section all Gracie had been able to afford at the time, but she'd since had a new headstone installed. Beautiful black granite with Eleanor's name, dates, and a quote from her favorite poem engraved in elegant script. They'd brought fresh flowers, tulips, Eleanor's favorite, the kind that are expensive this time of year. But Gracie didn't care about the cost. Riley knelt and arranged the flowers carefully in the built-in vase. Gracie stood back, giving her granddaughter space to talk to her mama privately. After a few minutes, Riley stood and took Gracie's hand. "Your turn, Grandma." Gracie knelt at her daughter's grave. She placed her hand on the cool granite, feeling the engraved letters under her palm. "Hey, baby girl, I brought Riley to see you. She's doing so good, Eleanor. So good. Straight A's in her new school. She's taking piano lessons, you should hear her play. And she smiles again, baby. Your girl smiles. I kept my promise to you. The one I made when you were dying. I told you I'd take care of her, and I am. She's safe. She's loved. She's got everything she needs and more. And baby, I need to tell you something. About what happened after you left. About how dark it got, and how Darius threw me out, and how I ended up homeless. But also about how God had a plan all along. How he led me to people who became family. How he led me to the truth about my father. How he turned my greatest loss into my greatest blessing. Your husband tried to break me. He called me worthless. And for a while, I believed him. But you know what I learned? That my worth was never determined by what I had or where I lived. Or how much money was in my bank account. My worth was determined by who I am. By how I love. By how I rise." She looked up at the sky, blue and perfect, with white clouds drifting lazily. "They tried to put me in the dark, Eleanor. But that's where God does his best work. That's where he rebuilds you. That's where he makes you unbreakable." Riley squeezed her grandmother's hand. "Mama would be so proud of you, Grandma. And she'd be proud of you too, baby." They stood together for a long moment, grandmother and granddaughter. 2 generations of strong black women, standing at the grave of the woman who connected them. Finally, Gracie stood, brushing grass from her knees. "Come on, baby. Let's go home." They walked back to the car hand in hand. Behind them, Eleanor's grave stood surrounded by fresh flowers, bathed in morning sunlight. The city skyline glittered in the distance. Somewhere in it was their penthouse. Their new life. Their future. But they carried the past with them too. The lessons. The love. The knowledge that you can lose everything. And still be rich in the ways that matter most. So let's bring this home, beloved. Gracie Miller's story is about a lot of things. It's about betrayal and survival. About homelessness and inheritance. About a billion-dollar empire. Built by a father who never stopped looking for his daughter. But at its heart, it's about something much simpler and much more profound. It's about the fact that your story isn't over until God says it's over. Gracie was 60 years old, broke, grieving, and sleeping in her car. By every measure society uses, she was done. Finished. A cautionary tale. But God had other plans. See, the thing about valleys is that they teach you things mountains never could. When Gracie was down there in that parking lot, when she had nothing, she learned what actually matters. She learned who she really was. She learned the difference between blood family and chosen family. She learned that the Black Church isn't just a building, it's a living, breathing community that catches you when you fall. And she learned that cruelty has consequences. Darius thought he was throwing away a useless old woman. What he actually did was lead her straight to her destiny. If he'd been kind, if he'd let her stay, she might never have ended up at Emmanuel Baptist. She might never have been found by those investigators. She might have died never knowing she was an heiress. His cruelty saved her, and destroyed him. That's what the Bible means when it says vengeance belongs to God. Not because God is cruel, but because God's justice is perfect. Darius didn't need Gracie to punish him. His own choices did that just fine. Now, I know what some of you are thinking. This is a nice story, but it's not realistic. Homeless people don't become billionaires. That's fairy tale stuff. And you're right. Most homeless people don't inherit billions. Most people in Gracie's situation don't get a miraculous rescue. But here's what is realistic: rising. Getting back up. Refusing to let your circumstances define you. Sister Margaret didn't give Gracie $1 billion. She gave her a plate of eggs and a place to sleep. Brother James didn't hand her an empire. He told her which gas stations had clean bathrooms. The church didn't make her rich. They made her feel human again. And that's everything. Because here's the truth that Gracie learned and that we all need to hear. You can be broke and still be powerful. You can have nothing and still be rich in the ways that count. You can be 60 years old with your whole life behind you and still have your most important chapter ahead of you. For every Gracie out there right now, for every grandmother sleeping in her car, every person who's been thrown away by family, every senior who thinks it's too late to start over, listen to me. It's not over. Your chapter 8 is coming. And it might not look like $1 billion, but it will look like peace. Like dignity. Like knowing your worth wasn't determined by the people who couldn't see your value. For every Sister Margaret reading this, every person who works in a church or shelter or food pantry, feeding people and treating them with dignity, you're not just serving meals. You're saving lives. You're being the hands and feet of Jesus. And sometimes, you're giving people exactly what they need to survive. Until their blessing arrives. For every Riley out there, every grandchild being raised by a grandmother, every kid who walked through rain to save $23 for someone they love, your sacrifice matters. Your love matters. You're part of somebody's testimony. And for every Darius, well, I hope you're listening carefully. Because this is your warning: how you treat people when they have nothing. That's who you really are. And the Bible isn't lying when it says you reap what you sow. You can't plant cruelty and harvest compassion. You can't throw people away and expect loyalty. You can't demand respect while showing none. Darius lost everything not because Gracie punished him, but because his choices caught up with him. That's not revenge. That's consequences. Gracie Miller went from ashes to empire. From a church basement to a penthouse. From worthless to priceless. But the most important transformation wasn't financial. It was spiritual. It was emotional. It was understanding that she'd always been valuable, even when she had nothing. The money just made it easier for the world to see what God had known all along. So if you're in your valley right now, if life has knocked you down, if people have counted you out, if you're sleeping in your car or on somebody's couch or in a church basement, I want you to remember something. The same God who saw Gracie in that Walgreens parking lot sees you right now. The same God who led her to Emmanuel Baptist knows exactly where you are. The same God who had $1 billion inheritance waiting for her has something waiting for you too. It might not be money. It might be peace, reconciliation, healing, purpose, a second chance, a new beginning. But it's coming, beloved. It's coming. And when it arrives, you'll look back on this valley and understand. This wasn't where you ended. This was where you began. From ashes, we rise. Always. This has been the story of Gracie Miller. Thank you for walking this journey with us. And remember, keep the faith. Stay strong. Your chapter 8 is coming. God bless you, beloved. God bless you.